Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
I was at the CMO Club Summit in Marina del Rey a few weeks back and had the privilege of leading a lively discussion about B2B storytelling with over 30 highly engaged CMOs. As I insist on doing at these events, I told a personal story as a quick example of the power of storytelling. Well, it worked. They put their phones down and tuned in. They asked lots of questions, and they shared what's worked and others shared what hadn't. And they left wanting to learn more. A bunch of them asked for this storytelling guide that I'll offer you all later in the episode, which got me thinking maybe I should do a special episode of Renegade Thinkers Unite that focuses on storytelling, highlighting some of the experts I've talked to in the first 79 episodes, and there are a lot of them. So that's where we are. In this episode, you'll hear from author and branding legend David Aaker on why storytelling matters, even for B2B brands. Then it's Manny Rodriguez, CMO of UC Health, on why it's important not to have your brand be the hero of your own story. Then we'll listen to Martin Herring, CMO of Finastra, on how storytelling can start with your brand name, especially if you're a new brand. Then we'll hear from Rich Keilberg, CMO of Aero Electronics, and the amazing story of a race car driver named Sam. And finally, we'll go to Carolyn Feinstein, CMO at Dropbox, on the story behind their rebranding. I hope you enjoy this special episode. Here's David Aaker, author of Creating Signature Stories, on why storytelling is so important, even to B2B brands. Why are we all so coming to this point where we're realizing that storytelling is so important for brands and B2B brands in particular?
Customers, especially B2B customers, want to have a relationship with an organization that they respect, they admire, they trust, and so that becomes a critical job. Second thing is, it's really hard to do that these days because your audience members, it's so sad, but they don't care about you. They don't care about your firm. They don't care about your brand. They don't care about your offering. They just don't care. They're
not waiting for the messages that
we're
pushing out
at them?
No, they're not.
They've got other things to do. They've got other things on their mind. And you know, they're disinterested. They're skeptical. And they're a tough audience. And also, the media world is cluttered today. It's really hard. So into this context steps story. You really have, two choices. You can give people facts, or you can tell stories. And facts simply don't work. You know, especially when you have a hostile context that I just, described, or a difficult context. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of studies that have documented the facts that in comparison to facts, stories get attention, stories change perceptions, stories change attitude, stories inspire, stories stimulate action. And I'm not talking about 20%, 30% more effective. I'm talking about 200%, 300%. It's just staggering if you look at how futile it is to try to convince people of anything using facts. I have a friend that runs a very large nonprofit, and she just put out a annual statement of all her programs. It was very dense, and there was not one story in it. And she has these dramatic stories she could have put in there, and she didn't. So why is that? And why do B2B people insist on talking about product specifications? And it's because, you know, first of all, they have this terrible, erroneous notion that their customers are logical and rational and want to know facts. But even beyond that, they've got this, they developed communication objectives. They say, what do we want them to know? And it's a list of 4 to 7 facts. And so what would you do with that charge? Well, you put out the 4 to 7 facts. You don't look for a story because, first of all, it's hard to find a story that communicates even 1 or 2 of those facts well. No story will communicate them all well. And so it just is inefficient and it's troublesome. And so and besides, why would you do that if customers are rational? And so there's a great bias toward delivering facts.
Next up is Manny Rodriguez, CMO of UC Health, a large Colorado-based hospital chain. This goes all the way back to episode 34. And by the way, I love the work that Manny has done. I often feature his "This Isn't Normal" video, which tells the story of a mother and a daughter who face ovarian cancer. And it's just a gut-wrenching a story. And I share it in my presentation, 7 Reasons Why Most Brands Fail at Storytelling. And I did that recently at a banking conference. And one of the CMOs said, stop with the emotional stuff. They were weeping. Anyway, this is Manny Rodriguez again. Give it a listen. And for the full episode, go to number 34. Talk about the process that got you to this marketing campaign that is so lovely.
I appreciate that. And, the goal here was to create emotion, right? And, when we landed on the brand of, this notion that we want to be a patient-centric brand, one of the very first things we decided is as a patient-centric brand, we need to stop talking about ourselves and start focusing on the patient. Most healthcare brands look at themselves as the hero, and we believe that our patients are the hero. Our patients go through tremendous sacrifices and agony and pain and suffering to get to better, and we felt that we needed to tell their story. And in telling a story, we realized that you need to create a connection with people, and you can't do that in 30 seconds, and this is why we decided to create films, and that's why the campaigns that you saw that, I appreciate that they moved you, were 90-second spots that really allowed you to make a connection with the patient, connection with the character, and really move you. And the one thing that we took a big risk on is we looked at, having actors portray these people, and we felt that actors just will never, no matter how good they are, be able to draw the raw emotion of the patient. So we took the risk of really casting the patient and telling the story, and the payoff and the benefit has been huge. You really feel, hear, and sense the heartache and the emotion and the feelings in the story. So we really believe in 360-degree marketing. So we're in TV, we're in print, we're in radio, we're in out of home. We're very actively involved in social and digital. We're out in the community with these stories, partnering with our internal PR folks, and with Ogilvy, we're really looking to push these stories. And the patients themselves have been amazing advocates to tell these stories for us. And we've gotten, I think just Peyton alone, we've gotten like 57 television news stories all across the country, even in London and Japan, of people wanting to tell their story. And the beauty is, because of their relationship with us and because of their gratitude to what we were able to do for them, they never tell their story without us being in the mix, and that's been a great partnership with the patients. The other thing is, clearly you can't air 90-second TV spots. The budgets just won't allow it. So we have created 30-second spots, and you have no idea how hard it is to try and take a beautiful 90-second story with tremendous emotion and impact and try and get that same emotion and impact in the 30. But these television spots were the brainchild of my internal agency, and they've done a great job of taking 90s and editing them down to really compelling and emotional 30s. So we're very fortunate. And the reason that these stories are so compelling is because we have these emotional connections and relationships with the patients, so we're allowed to tell the story. Like if I said to you, Drew, tell me about your son, you'd be able to tell me a very compelling, passionate story. But if I tell me about my son, you'd only be able to tell me about the details I've shared with you. So we wrote the stories internally, but we worked with our agency at the time, Gray San Francisco, to help produce, help get a director, really help bring them to life. And the partnership between the internal agency and Gray San Francisco was truly a phenomenal partnership.
The term storytelling is thrown around so much in our industry. We heard it a lot on the stage. And at least from my perspective, it's overused and underdelivered in that people don't really understand what we're talking about when it comes to brand. And what you provided in these things is the hero's journey. I mean, the princess she was a damsel in distress. You guys have an interesting role in this story, but you're not the center of the story, the individual, the hero. What are the sort of three sort of key lessons?
The first one is frequent communications. You can't over communicate. Anytime you go down this journey, you're going to move somebody's cheese, and you're going to have a lot of naysayers and resistance, and communicate and over-communicate. The second part of this is having tough skin. As you know, no matter how great something is, people are not going to like it. People are going to wish you continue to do things the own way. People are going to be critical. You got to have tough skin. You can't take things personally. The third thing is you got to be very patient. Things take time. Whenever you're reinventing the wheel or trying to do something different or trying to push the envelope, you got to be patient. And those are three you asked for. I'll give a fourth one, and the fourth one is really perseverance. Is you got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in the idea. You got to fight for the idea, and don't give up. Right? Just because there are hiccups along the way, persevere, keep fighting, keep pushing forward.
Now we move to Martin Herring, CMO at Finastra, which is a financial services firm you'll hear about in a second. This was episode 66, and one of the things that we all don't often think about is baking the storyline right from the very beginning, and you'll hear how they did that at Finastra. What were some of the things that worked and seemed to get employees excited about the new brand?
Well, the first thing that is exciting is how do you create a new brand name? Because there are so many legal hurdles that you need to cross because you just can't put a name into the market. It's a very long cycle to just identify the right name of the new company. As simple as this might sound, but it's very complex in the background. It starts with a list of 100 proposed names that you need to boil down to maybe 10. Then you have large trademarks checks and language checks, so that you are not coming up with a name that might sound nice in the UK but insults people in China. But what's even more important is that your name creates a story right from the start. In marketing, we are all storytellers, right? We have to create emotions. And if you put a brand out, you need to make sure that 10,000 people in the background would say, what a great idea. What a great story. This is my personal company. This story is easy to tell, and I can tell it to my grandma and maybe even make her exciting. So when we put the name in place, the name is a conglomerate of two things. Fin, which stands for financial industries, financial technologies. And the second is Astra. And Astra is the Latin word for star. So we wanted to be a star in the financial industry, in the financial software industry. We want to be the new shining star in this universe. So all our events that we are creating right now are called Finastra Universe. And that comes along with a new different thinking. So it's not just continuing what we have done in the past, selling software, shrink wrap software, but we want to start now a new journey, which is called platform as a service. We have put all our software now into the cloud. And we have opened up that cloud to all the fintechs in the world so they can start to build financial applications on top of that platform. What is Force.com for Salesforce? more or less Finastra is now for the financial industry and community to build new innovation on top. Our new principle is that we want that innovation happens outside of Finastra, but takes the Finastra platform as the stable back-end infrastructure to drive financial success.
Okay.
So we have completely moved away, and we wanted to build a new story from the start, starting with that name.
Now let's listen to Rich Keilberg, CMO of Arrow Electronics, which was from episode 69. If you're familiar with the classic arc of the hero's journey, then you'll recognize it in Rich's tale about a race car driver who overcomes incredible obstacles.
So we found a young guy who, his father was a race car driver. He was racing in Mexico. He crashed and he became a paraplegic. And you talk about risk, like driving a race car. This little boy watches his father become a paraplegic, but he continues on to race himself. And he becomes a very successful race car driver. He races Indy cars, and he's racing in an Indy car, and he gets a crash, I guess, and he's hospitalized, honestly, for 6 or 9 months, and he's all busted up. He comes out of the hospital, and he gets back in his Indy car for the first time, and he's down at the Disney World track in Orlando, and he hits the wall, and now this little boy who saw his father paralyzed is now a quadriplegic himself. Mm. And that's it. His racing days are done, obviously. He's in the hospital. He gets out. He goes on in life, to kind of be a successful business person. That's great. And he actually goes on to own his own racing team. But his racing days are over. His name's Sam Schmidt, and we met him, and we thought, here's a story. Here's a story that can demonstrate what we believe, what we stand for, and what we can do. So Arrow set out to build a car, and we took a racing Corvette that Sam Schmidt could drive as a quadriplegic. And to this day, we call it the Sam car, but his name is Sam Schmidt, but Sam stands for semi-autonomous motor car. It's not fully autonomous, but it's semi-autonomous, and he can drive it with his head. And so here Sam drives this race car with his head around the track at Indy, and we get all kinds of media coverage and attention for it. And the employees are celebrating. Our customers are saying, wow, this is the kind of company we want to work for. He went on to drive that car up the Pikes Peak Hill climb, talk about risk. You go off a cliff, you're dead doing that. He raced it. He got it up to 190 miles per hour. He actually went head to head in a race against Mario Andretti, which was kind of fun. And there's all these accomplishments and so on in this car driven by his head. But I got to tell you, Drew, last year he accomplished the most amazing thing in this entire endeavor. Sam Schmidt got his driver's license.
Such a cool
and he took
story.
his kids for a Sunday drive. The kind of thing we take for granted every single day, and totally changed his life. Now, this initiative has been featured on Jay Leno's Garage. It's been on NBC Nightly News. We've had over 2 billion earned media impressions on this thing. So it went crazy from a marketing perspective, from an awareness perspective, from any possible metric you put on it for us. It was a wild success. And it said, we guide innovation forward. We're 5 years out, and we work on technology to benefit humanity. Totally transformed the company. Totally pushed us into the dominant position in our industry, this initiative. And really, at the end of the day, it's storytelling against values and words and phrases and ideas that we cook up in the first place.
Before we go on to the next segment, I want to refer back to something I said in the opening part about a storytelling guide that we put together for our clients and a lot of folks have found quite useful. Lists a lot of the books that I've read and my go-to storytelling great course that is amazing. Anyway, if you're interested in getting our storytelling guide, you can email me. I have a special email address. It's drew@renegade.com, and it's just for that, and we'll send you the latest version of our storytelling guide. Finally, it's time for Carolyn Feinstein, the CMO of Dropbox. This is from episode number 74, and we pick up as Carolyn is explaining her perspective on the role of the CMO, and you'll hear quickly on the importance of storytelling.
I guess my go-to story on that topic is that how deeply I believe that our job as marketers is story. At the end of the day, our role is to understand the people that we're trying to reach deeply, understand where our areas of shared passion are, and to know the kind of stories that will resonate most deeply, and then to try to tell them in as bold and as brave a way as we possibly can.
So we've been talking a lot about story, both on the show and among my associates. And it's funny. It's actually difficult to decide what a story is and what isn't a story. Have you addressed that challenge? I mean, what's a story to you?
I think a story to me is an articulation of who your company, who your brand, or who your products intend to be in the world, the role that you want to play, and the impact that you hope to have. And then to tell a story about that is one that really connects. I think sometimes I think we believe that storytelling is just for consumers. And in truth, no matter who we're selling to, whether we're selling to people in a consumer environment, in a business environment, we're all people, and we all connect and receive information through story at our core. So, regardless of the setting, I think it all kind of distills down to the power of story. As you know, I mean, any great brand story is really rooted in kind of a universal truth or a fundamental problem that needs solving. And we did a tremendous amount of upfront strategy work to get to this campaign idea. I mean, many months more, frankly, than I had ever done before. And the root of the problem that we really hooked onto is the crisis of modern work. I think for many of us, modern work has become a grind, and we are distracting ourselves to death with the constant, pinging and messaging, and the realization that for us to get to the kind of creative outcomes or to solve some of the most meaty challenges that we face as a society, we need the time to focus as creative groups of people to kind of to solve those problems. And that time and that focus is increasingly hard to come by. And so that was the universal truth that we really wanted to go after. And that's what got us to this idea of the world needs your creative energy. And this fact that we fundamentally believe as Dropbox that every single one of us wakes up in the morning with this tremendous reservoir of creative energy inside us. And that creative energy is either multiplied and enhanced by the power of a great team like the one working on your show and great tools that enable you to do extraordinary things, or it's dissipated like so many other precious resources. And we really want Dropbox and products, to your point, like Dropbox Paper and Dropbox Showcase, to solve for some of these problems and to allow us to do what human beings do best, which is come up with creative solutions that drive businesses or creative outcomes or societal challenges forward. So I think to your point, this was very much about telling a high-level story about unleashing the world's creative energy, which is the role that we want to play, and then making it clear that Dropbox is uniquely in position to accomplish that because of the products that we have recently launched.
Now, typically at the end of every episode of Renegade Thinkers Unite, I do a wrap-up where I try to summarize on extemporaneously what you just heard and wrap it up into a nice, neat little bow. And there were some things that you heard that I think you'll know are really important. The importance of having suspense in your story. You heard that in Manny Rodriguez, the hero's journey, the element of surprise. These are all parts of storytelling. But in truth, I think the only way to talk about storytelling is by becoming a storyteller yourself. something I've been working on a lot lately, and I want to tell you a story. And since you're listening and a captive audience, let me tell you a funny story that happened to me earlier in my career. It was one of those rare Los Angeles days, smog-free, blue skies, and the air was crisp. It was a perfect setup for what I hoped would be a perfect pitch. We were breakfasting at a diner right across the street from One West Bank, the headquarters in Pasadena, and we were the opposite of stressed out. Like a well-prepared boxer, we were ready. I mean, really ready. We were confident in our strategic sharpness. We had the big idea. We even had most of the tactical details worked out to deliver a successful launch campaign. So when we walked over to the bank about 15 minutes before the appointed hour, witnesses might have seen a slight swagger in our step. Little did we know that our swagger was about to be shattered. Entering the bank, we enlightened the dowdy receptionist that we had arrived and to alert our future client of our presence. The first hint of trouble came in the form of a slightly raised eyebrow, followed by a hesitant call upstairs. So then, as nicely as she could muster, she told us that our contacts weren't there. For maybe the second time in my career, I went ashen. Where were they? What had gone wrong? Had we flown to California for nothing? A cell phone call revealed the truth. They were waiting for us in West LA. You see, we were pitching a new debit card from One West Bank in partnership with Magic Johnson Enterprises. And when our bank contact said headquarters, he meant Magic's headquarters. That was a 40-minute drive on a good day, and we had maybe 14 minutes to get there. Running to the car with one of my associates, it was me against every driver in La La Land. Dodging, weaving, and topping 90 often. Dale Earnhardt had nothing on me that day. With the pedal to the metal, my heart and mind were racing as well. Was my biggest pitch of the year about to crash and burn? Could we recover from such a seemingly careless error? Meanwhile, we heard from the rest of the team that they had been stopped by the police for making an illegal U-turn. I'm not making any of this up, by the way. And that we should start without them. Are you kidding me? So let's think about this. Start with 2 of the 5 presenters, only 3 of them not being in the room? Well, we sped ahead, and we arrived in record time, set up our laptop, tried to hide the sweat on our brows, and waited for Magic Johnson to enter the room. Yeah, that Magic Johnson. So at this point in my story, hopefully you're wondering whether or not we got the business. Or maybe you're wondering what kind of idiot doesn't reconfirm the location of an important meeting. Or you're wondering what Magic Johnson is like in person. I'll answer that one. He's super nice. Or you're asking yourself, what's the purpose of Drew's story? And let me answer that last question first. My goal was to get your attention through the art of storytelling, to share a conflict, in this case 3 conflicts. Man versus nature, the traffic, man versus man, the pitch, and man versus himself, the fear. And then to leave you hanging, at least for a second, since the suspense and surprise are critical parts of storytelling. Why else would we say, wait, don't tell me what happens, or spoiler alert? Well, back to my story. When Magic walked in, he shook our hands, made some small talk, and then suggested we got started, even though 3 of our team members weren't there yet. So that's what we did. We started. And since Magic the Man was the hero of our pitch, I took a deep breath and laid out our plan to make sure that our marketing recommendations were as great as the man himself. 20 minutes later, my colleagues arrived, just in time to show that we were a team and had the wherewithal, not to mention the grace under fire, to get the job done. I'll leave you in suspense for a second or two, but yeah, we got the business. And part of it was our grace under fire. I love that story. I can't help but wonder what stories you have, and maybe you'd share them with me. You can email me them. You can text me them. You've got myself from back episodes. Anyway, I'd love to hear your stories and share some of your adventures out there in marketing land. Let me know if you have stories that you think I should be investigating. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.